Valentine's Day. Hi, welcome to the ryoknits podcast. My name is Rhiannon, and I am a knitter, knitwear designer, knitting instructor living in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. If you're new here, welcome. If you are a returning viewer, I'm so glad that you are choosing to come back. Let's get started. So it is February of 2022, and I think that this is going to be a short episode because it's a short month. So also, it's very easy to record a long episode. It's a lot harder to do it in less time, because I find that I always have so much to talk about when it comes to knitting, and I like to share with you what I'm reading, and that's another passion of mine. So I'm going to really try to keep it brief. I have a couple of announcements. The first announcement is that I released a pattern. So I released a free mitten pattern for the Home of the High Life mittens. It did really well. It was in the Ravelry Hot Right Now, that was very exciting. And I knew that, a free pattern is always going to have a lot of enthusiasm, because I think people do intentionally search for free patterns. But also what I think maybe people were excited about was the versatility of it. So I designed a mitten that you can make a fingerless mitt. You can make, a full kind of standard mitten. And you can also make a fingerless mitt that has a, kind of a convertible, or I call it a flip top, because you flip it over and then you have a full mitten. So the reason I made that was just, who doesn't want that, right? But I find that it can be hard to find just really standard, like what I think is like well-written, well-explained standard patterns that help you as maybe a new knitter, or maybe as someone who wants to start designing, really get down to the nitty-gritty of what are the basic elements of this thing, right? So a basic element, for example, of a mitten is that you have a cuff, you have the part that's on your wrist, you have kind of the hand section with the thumb gusset, which is, it's growing. So, learning about how to do gussets to increase stitches for, to accommodate the thumb. And, then you separate, and then you have the rest of the hand and the rest of the thumb as separate pieces. So, really just basic fundamental stuff that gives you a lot of opportunity to play and experiment with color and experiment with, mixing yarns, or however else you might want to play with your knitting. You have a basic thing. And then if you ever wanted to, turn around and design a mitten pattern, you have all the basic elements of it. It's a pattern that I kind of see as a learning tool, as well as just like a fun pattern to make. So thank you to everybody who has downloaded that. And it's very exciting for me as a nascent designer to see my pattern so well received. And thank you. It means a lot, because, we're heading into year 3 of this sort of never-ending global nightmare. And I think, I speak for myself, but I think I speak for other people. Joy can be hard to grasp in the best of times. And in these times, it can be really, it's just really important to have things that feel like victories, right? And so for me, this season is always kind of like, it's the end of winter. It's no longer feeling especially festive or whatever. And I just want to have a win. And so this was my win. And I really am glad that people are enjoying it. And, the comments on it are just so awesome. I love, I love hearing from people that are downloading it. And I can't wait to see what everybody's making. The other announcement I have to make is that I have started putting together a prize package for the knit-along I'm hosting. It's a year-long knit-along. All you have to do is knit something blue, and I'm calling it Knit Blue 2022. So if you wanted to post on social media with the hashtag Knit Blue 2022 Cal. That's all there is to it. And the reason that I'm making it kind of so broad and so easy to participate is just that I think, we need things sometimes that are really general and really kind of an open, y'all come. I want everyone to feel like they can participate. So, really, if you knit something that was, blue and white striped, like that would count, right? I mean, it doesn't have to be a big garment or anything like in particular. You could put a blue cuff on a mitten and call it a day. I mean, I think the blue needs to kind of stand out. That's it. Or be, a key element of the color palette of whatever it is you're knitting. And I just, I love making prize packages. So at first I thought, I'll just give somebody a gift card to a yarn shop they like. And I might still do that, but I've started to build a prize package. So hang on. One of the things that will be in the prize package is a candle. This is actually my used candle. You're not going to get that. You're going to get a brand new one. But it's from Milwaukee Candle Company. I don't have the other one yet because I have to go buy it. So I haven't been out and about a lot lately, but I have a plan to include a little candle in the prize package. So I think that will probably affect what else goes in there because it could be heavy. So I like to have treats that are kind of like, local to where I am. So there's going to be a candle from Milwaukee Candle Company. There might be some other Milwaukee specific treats, but I have two things in there. So the candle and then also a mug that are going to be a little bit kind of heavy. So here is the mug. This is from an artist in Portland, Oregon. So just something I have that I've been kind of saving for a giveaway prize, again, because I love to kind of curate gift baskets, so to speak. And then I think the rest of the prize will probably be some yarn or maybe a gift card, but we'll see. I'm gonna keep adding to it, and it would be fun to do, kind of a big prize. I like giving away a big prize because I think it's fun to get like a box of things rather than just one thing, right? So of course there has to be yarn involved, right? That's the obvious one, but it can be really hard to pick yarn for other people. And I'm really cognizant of, that the choosing the candle scent could also be a very personal thing. So I might buy a couple and then, maybe let someone choose which of them that they want. So you'll have some fragrance options, I guess. So just to kind of get you excited, I guess, about that knit along. And I've knitted two blue things so far. So let's segue to finished objects. The first finished object is actually two because it's a pair of Towy mittens. So I knit these in a wool silk blend yarn with a silk mohair. So there's a lot of silk in them. I feel like they're not as warm, and the yarn, of course, isn't as fluffy as some of the other ones I've made, but I really do love this pair, and I wore them on a hike, which was a bad judgment call, but I just wanted to wear them. I find that this color, this is kind of the real thing about me knitting with blue this year is like finding the things that just really bring me a ton of joy. And this color makes me so incredibly happy because it's so bright. It's so like energizing to me. I don't know how to explain it any other way, but it's very hard to not want to wear these, when I'm doing like things like hiking where it's like I'm going to pick up sticks. I'm going to pick up, acorn caps and things and poke dead things with sticks. I actually did get to do that this time. So, it's gonna get a little bit of rough usage. So I think I'm gonna have to make another pair that's maybe something sturdier so I don't just beat these up. I don't know. The second finished object I have is my Solverv shawl. So this is a pattern by Skeindeer Knits. Oh, I don't really know how well you can see this, but it's a big shawl with garter stitch and a lace border, and it's knit all in one piece, which is really awesome. It's been a long time since I knit something that was, I would say, kind of scarf-like, in that you have you're knitting it flat and you have a long piece kind of hanging off your needles. And you know, we all start, it's kind of like the joke that people start with a garter stitch scarf in their knitting journey. And I think, why do we stop doing that? It's still fun, right? It's still really fun. And I ended up with a very long shawl that I really, you know, wear more like a scarf. So here it is. It's long enough to wrap around and hang down, and you know, I can even wrap it twice if I want to be like real snugly warm. I kind of cinch that up and then put it around again. So I mean, it's got a lot of length to it. It's really nice because the yarn weight is fingering weight. I actually did lace held double and it came out great. It's at a very loose gauge, so you get a very, like, I don't know, it's squishy in a way that I guess is kind of the opposite of like a densely knit bulky squish, but like it's the same sort of tactile yumminess. So I love this. I already wear it a lot, and I think, you know, again, my instincts about knitting things with blue is just spot on. So this is technically my first finished object that I started in 2022 and finished in 2022. So hooray. I'm actually gonna wear it right now because I really like it. So yay, something got on the needles, came off the needles. I'm feeling like I started the year well. That is not how 2021 went for many of us. And I'm no exception. I definitely, we won't even talk about it. So on to works in progress. So the first work in progress is actually, it's a bunch of little things. So I had found, like, last year, I don't know if it was released last year, but I discovered it last year. The Little Hearts Garland pattern by Suzen B. Anderson. And I've been knitting little hearts and stuffing them with fiberfill. There's a close-up. And I think you can see why I don't do amigurumi or like knit like toys or things. They just come out weird looking. I don't know what it is. I feel like I just don't have the gift of making things, but these are meant to be felted, and I hope that felting will fix the shapes, or I hope that just at least when they're all hung up together, it's not so bad. So I think actually something I'm observing is that maybe the denser the weight of the fabric, the worse the shape looks. But this one was done with a light fingering and mohair, and I think it came out the best. So yeah, I've just been knitting these little hearts, and my idea is just, you know, to continue with this idea of like playing with yarn more and playing with color more, is that it's a chance for me to revisit yarns that I've used in the past and use up, you know, I mean, yes, it's stash busting, but it's really about like getting to revisit something and then also getting to see all these yarns from different projects like together, you know? So one of my Home of the High Life mittens was in this pink, which is a Malabrigo worsted in this awesome geranium color, and the camera is not even doing it justice. It is like the craziest hot pink. it's like screaming pink. I love it. And then this is some sock yarn with mohair that I had done in the Sweater of Doom. We won't talk about that, but yeah, I've just been knitting all these little hearts, and in the end I think I'm probably gonna just make a garland and hang them on my mantle or something. But it's just something I can work on periodically and not feel, I don't feel like pressure to complete it, because how many hearts go in a garland? I don't know, I could do 5 and I'd be done. I could do 20, you know, it's up to you. So that's a fun project to have, just kind of for when I just feel like it, I guess. And the funny thing is, I went to buy fiberfill at a craft store, and the smallest bag they had was like this huge, I mean, not huge, but you know, like pretty big. And so I feel like I could make 8,000 of these, because I have a pretty big bag of polyfill and I don't know what else to do with it. And they didn't have any stuffing that was like natural, which I don't know if that even exists, but I guess I assumed there would be like an organic cotton version, and all I found was polyfill. So, you know, yeah, it'll last me forever. It's one bag, and not, you know, it's not going in the landfill tomorrow. Anyway, the next project I want to share is a pair of socks that I'm knitting for my wife. This is the pattern Luminary by Helen Stewart. It has the heel flap and gusset, and then it has on the front, so the back is just all stockinette, which I think is awesome, because I like knitting half as much pattern. And it has a twisted rib at the top and this really cool panel of stitches that looks like stars in the front. So let me kind of hold it up. It's probably the biggest sock I've ever knit. Well, not the biggest, but like the longest, because I don't usually knit a very high leg on a sock. I haven't knit that many socks. And one of my goals for the future, not necessarily for this year, but just in general, is to get better at knitting socks. So here's the first one done. And you can see it's got a pretty long leg. The leg is definitely longer than the foot. And yeah, I'm not used to that, but the pattern is written, she writes her patterns in a way that is like every single line until you get to the foot part is written out. And the reason the foot part isn't is because everyone's foot is a different length, right? But, you know, depending on your stitch count, you're going to have one of 3 options, I think. And then, you know, from the very top, when you cast on down through the heel flap and gusset, it's the same. So I've knit one, and I have the beginnings of a second sock. What's really beautiful about this system, the way she writes it, is that she gives you percentages. So I know that I am more than 10% done with the second sock, which means I'm more than 60% done with the whole project. So I think that's a really new, it's new to me, and it's also really exciting and encouraging to be working from a pattern where everything's written out like that, because you can kind of track your progress and you don't have to guess. So I'll just tell you about the yarn I'm using. This is Sprigs and Stone, which is based in Olympia, Washington. So Pacific Northwest. This is their Hearty fingering, which is such a funny, a Hearty fingering, that's what it's called. So it's only 55% superwash merino. It's 25% nylon, so it's good and strong, and it's 20% kid mohair. So I think, you know, we're all used to like the mohair silk lace, but like mohair mixed into fabrics is, or into yarns, is really new to me, and that's exciting. So the first time I did it, used it was in the Father Cables I knit with the fiber company's Cumbria, I think. And that had a little bit of mohair in the actual yarn. This has even more mohair in the yarn, and you get 438 yards to 100 grams. That's pretty generous. And this colorway is called London Fog. I don't know, why am I showing you this? Just so you can see the label. So Sprigs and Stone, the colorway is London Fog, and it's kind of like a gray. It's a really beautiful tonal silvery gray, but it has these like bits of like a rusty orange in there that kind of just put a little stank on it, and it's really cool because it does remind me of like metal, like a metal pipe that's rusted or something. It has a very, I don't know, dare I say industrial kind of feel to it. And meanwhile, of course, it's this like, you know, luxurious hand knitted sock with mohair. So really cool combination. And the reason I chose this pattern to go with this sock is that my wife really loved the book The Luminaries by, I think, Elizabeth Catton. It's one of her favorite books. And so I chose the Luminary because not only does it look awesome, you know, I knew this yarn and this pattern would look great together, and I was right. But, you know, it's just kind of like a nod to that too. It's, you know, like her favorite book. So yeah. First kind of February project. I should say I'm knitting these socks with a size 1 needle. I'm back down to the size 1. It's the right choice. And I used a German twisted cast on because in the past I have struggled with cuffs that are either too tight or too loose. So I'm hoping that this ends up being the answer. I think that it looks right, you know, it doesn't look too tight at the top, and it's not like fluted, but it does have a ton of stretch. And you know, we've been doing try on tests, and I think it's gonna work out great. So this is gonna be my new cast on for a lot of things, and I feel really great because I've mastered the Kitchener stitch, and I've mastered the German twisted cast on. So now I feel like I've already improved my sock game, and I've got these like extra skills in my arsenal, so to speak. I made a project bag like 2 years ago, and that's what these are living in. So it's really fun to, you know, use this one because it buttons. Instead of having zippers. And I've thought about making more project bags that button, but honestly buttonholes are so fiddly, and I don't like how my sewing machine does them because I have a pretty like basic beginner machine. There's a train, yay. Oh gosh. So anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about some inspiration. So Mackenzie of M to the Third Yarn Co. created a really wonderful community. She's a very giving person in terms of her knowledge, her time, her energy, you know, her willingness to keep community alive. And so she started a sock stash along for 2022. And so the idea is if you have a lot of sock yarn in your stash, you're going to work through it. And something that she is encouraging people to do is to wrap their sock yarn up, and then, you know, they all look the same, right? From, you know, the packaging. So every month you pick one out, and or you know, if you're doing one every 2 months or whatever, you pick out a sock yarn, not knowing which one you're gonna get. And then it's like that directs you to, you know, then you're like, okay, I'm gonna knit with this yarn this month or whatever. I know that I have some obligation socks. I don't know. I I have particular socks that I want to work on first, or that I need to work on first. But after that, I think I am going to do kind of a surprise myself every month. I don't know yet, because I don't always respond well to surprises. But what I've done is I've gone through on Ravelry and created a favorites bundle of all the sock patterns that I really like, and I'm gonna try to match yarn that is in my stash to one of the patterns there. So I have, you know, you'll soon see I have a very strong favorite sock designer. The first two sock patterns, or the first two pairs of socks I knit, were designed by Yuka. So I did the Ruki sock, and then I did the Umemi, and then I actually went and did another kind of modified Umemi where I just made the foot plain, but like did the chart on the leg part. And I love those socks. I love everything about those patterns. They were easy to follow. They were I feel like they gave me good advice, so to speak, on needle size and all of that, and the results are really good. So even my Ruki socks that I used the wrong needle size for because I was being a horse's ass, they still came out really well, and I wear them all the time. In fact, I'm wearing them right now. So I clearly love Yuka's patterns. I also really love I'm starting to get on the Helen Stewart train a little bit, and sorry Nordland, everything she does is perfect. So she has some really good sock patterns too. And I'm just trying to, pardon me, I'm trying to curate like a bunch of sock patterns for myself, because I think that I've been, you know, just wanting to make socks and not really knowing what to do. So I think it's easier to start with a pattern for me than start with a yarn. So that's why I'm doing things the way I'm doing them, but I do consider myself a participant in the sock stash along. The final work in progress I have to share is another Felix sweater. So I knit the Felix maybe in 2020, maybe in 2021, who knows what time is. But I knit it for myself, and I knit it with a discontinued yarn from Rowan that was called Rowan Frost. It's a alpaca and viscose yarn, and it just had kind of no shape. So it ended up being like really off the shoulder, really drapey. And at first I liked it. At first I was like, okay, this is different. I can get with it. But over time it has just like lost its shape more and more because it's a loose gauge. That yarn was, I think, Aran weight, but not, I don't know. I think it was Aran weight by weight, but not like the thickness of strand. So something I've noticed is that alpaca just seems to weigh more than wool. So a lot of times what alpaca weighs, like I'm knitting with some, you know, alpaca DK yarn that to me feels more like a fingering to sport weight when you just look at the strand and when you just look at the gauge and stuff. So, you know, it's iffy, but I am making this with a bulky weight yarn, so no issues will be had. Oh, sorry. That was probably sounded worse on the camera or on the video than it does in real life, so sorry about that. So this is the Felix that I'm knitting. Here it is so far. Isn't it exciting when the sleeve separation has happened and then you can really start to see like the sweater emerging? So this is also for my wife. They're a really great person and they deserve cozy things. This is a Woolfolk yarn that I was going to make something for myself out of, and then I was like, this is the perfect color for you. So my wife has kind of eyes that are kind of green, kind of gray, kind of blue. They, you know, they shift and change. And so I was like, this is for you. So this color I think is called Seafoam Gray or something, so it's a gray green. It's kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, it's just very pale. So let me talk about the modifications I did and why I did them. So the first thing you'll notice is that this neckline is doubled over, right? Because this yarn has, it's 45% cotton and 55% wool. And it's that kind of construction that, you know, you have a tube of cotton and then they've blown wool fibers through it. So let me see if these ends, if you can see that at all. Maybe, I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it's like a mesh tube of cotton with wool blown through it. So, you know, structurally, I wasn't sure how well the collar would hold up, and also because it's a very loose collar, I wanted to bring it in quite a lot, because even with reducing a lot of stitches, it's still like a good fit. So my German twisted cast on gave me a little bit of extra give. I knit more rounds of ribbing, folded it down, and just knit through both stitches to get a folded over collar. And you can kind of like, I don't know, I feel like the purl stitches on the bottom of the ribbing are very noticeable, but I mean, who cares? And then the other modification I did was then, because I had fiddled around with stitch counts, I needed to do a few more increases on the body and sleeves. Just because of the way I was like fudging it. So I did some increases that were not done with the pattern, because I didn't want this lace eyelet to be like all the way down in the armpit to where it's like wrapping, you know, the fabric starts to wrap down under. And I just thought, you know, it's gonna look better to just do some kind of like plain increases. So, you know, using like make one left, make one right stitches instead of the eyelets. So that's really it. That's all I've changed. And I have yarn. I've made a yarn tangle. So here's the yarn. Here's what it looks like in the skein. And you get 109 yards per 50 grams for this. And I looked at the Woolfolk website, and it's actually more affordable than I thought. So I won this yarn in a giveaway, weirdly enough. I won a giveaway, and so I think I thought that this yarn was like $30 or something a skein. And I was like, oh my God, like for 10 skeins for a sweater quantity, because it's, you know, only 109 yards, you know, I'm looking at for my size, like 10 skeins. I thought, man, that would be a $300 worth of yarn, which I'm not saying isn't worth it, but just like, I don't usually spend that much on yarn. I don't usually spend $300 on a sweater quantity, I guess. You know, that's not my typical, and no shame on you if it is what you like to spend, great. I don't know, maybe I'm a cheapskate, but I just don't. And so, but yeah, it's actually $18 a skein, so more affordable than I thought it was, in case that matters to you. And it's bulky, and you could even do a looser gauge. Like I'm knitting this on size 10s. I'm getting I think a 14 stitches over 4 inches gauge. I think you could do it looser, honestly, because it's cotton. It's not going to have a ton of shape anyway. The tighter gauge just kind of gives it more of a rigid shape, but I have no doubts that once it's washed and, you know, worn, it's gonna expand a little, because that's what cotton does. And so when it's caked up, this is, you know, one skein makes a cake that big. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about that other than I am really loving knitting for my spouse, who's very knitworthy, and I'm, you know, enjoying, you know, having projects that aren't for me. I don't know why, but it just feels good right now. And I have another design in progress, so keep an eye out for that. I will be releasing it sometime in March. And it's going to be a cowl. It's going to have some color work, and it's going to use 2 colors. So, I'm using a yarn that I think I mentioned, you know, DK weight alpaca, but it really could be done with sport weight of wool. It really is, up to you really, that, you know, how you want that. It will look good if you adjust the gauge and adjust the needle size and adjust the fiber content. It's going to look good no matter what. You know, as long as it's something that color work, that is color work friendly, you know. So that is, I think, everything I have to share about knitting. I wanted to just quickly do a little book rundown because it's what I do, and just talk about what I'm reading. So if you were here just for knitting content, then you know, I'll see you next time. But if you're into books, let's talk about books. So the first book that I read this month was Velvet Was the Night by Silvia Moreno-Garcia, and I may have mentioned this before, but she's quickly becoming one of my new favorite authors. This one was kind of a noir, kind of pulp fiction, kind of you know, romance, and kind of the joke is that one of the characters in it is really obsessed with like pulp fiction, pulp romance. Mexico has a really great culture of like pulp fiction, you know, dime novels. So, you know, it's very evocative in that way. And the whole story is set in Mexico. So it's set in Mexico in like the 1960s, and there's a backdrop of kind of like the social and political events that were happening at the time, but it is kind of an unusual story with lots of adventure and a little bit of romance and stuff. So really kind of hits all the notes of if you're looking for a fun read. The next thing I read, because I was on that kind of noir-ish train, was Cover Her Face by P.D. James. I don't know if I had ever read this one before. I think I must have many years ago, but you know, I'm a fan of P.D. James's mystery. She's my favorite mystery author, I think, and it was really quite good to revisit that, and also to do it in an audiobook format. So I'm really getting into audiobooks now. You know, novels, not just nonfiction, and I've read very little nonfiction this month. After that, I wanted to read another detective story, so I read The Jigsaw Man by Nadine Matheson, and it's a little gruesome. It was a little too graphic for my taste. There was a lot of, I mean, just the title, you can imagine the jigsaw, right? He's using a jigsaw. And there was just like a little too much description of like violent crimes that I was like grossed out by. But it was a really good book. And the detective, who's the main character, is a very compelling, you know, unlike a lot of detectives, I didn't feel like it was total propaganda. Like, this detective was not, you know, it's that like detective who has their own personal problems, but like her personal problems are not like character flaws, if that makes sense. Like, it's just like being a regular person and being, you know, having like some confusion about what you want out of life. It's not like she's an alcoholic or, you know, beats her kids or something, you know. Like, I think sometimes there's like this whole thing where like there's a genre of like detective stories where the detective is like kind of a bad person. So this is a detective who is a good person and just has some problems. I enjoyed it overall. I would give it an 8 out of 10. You know, I docked 2 points because it was gross sometimes. It was very gross. And also the, you know, something I'm loving about audiobooks is the narrator can really do a book justice or not, and the narrator was really fantastic. She did a lot of voices, and some of them were downright creepy. So the next thing I started reading was Pastoral Song by James Rebanks. And oh my God. Oh my God. It's like, it's very close to my heart because I come from, I'm like 2 generations removed from a farm. So my dad grew up on a farm, a family farm, and so this is the story of family farms in Great Britain, in the Lake Country, or the Lake District, but I think it's sort of the story of farms around the world, right? And how the changes that have happened over the last half century have been beyond what anyone could have foreseen. And there's, you know, at one point he makes a comparison that, like, you know, 10,000 years of selective breeding produced a cow that could, you know, a prize-winning example of that breed could produce 5 gallons of milk a day. And then, you know, 10 years of genetic mutations with modern technology produced a cow where sort of like the average cow produces 10 gallons of milk a day. So just like that sort of, you know, what we can accomplish with our technology today in agricultural science is so far beyond what anybody has ever been able to do, and how that has really made farmers, you know, have to just kind of adapt to this change or lose their way of life. And human beings cannot adapt that quickly, as we all know. We're just not that great at it. So a really fascinating read. I'm very much going to reread it. I already know that. Let's see, what was the other thing? I started reading Lovecraft Country. I had watched the TV show, but I hadn't read it. So you've probably seen the show by now. There's not much different in the book. I mean, it really is true to the book. There are some key differences. You know, the most noticeable to me is that the girl in the show is actually a boy in the book. So, is it George and Hippolyta? They have a daughter in the TV show, but they have a son in the book. And I'm not really sure why that was changed, but, you know, it doesn't really impact the story because, or it doesn't seem to so far. I'm like 30% in, but it's a very good read. I've read one other book by this author before and was totally sucked into it at that point. So yeah, that's happening again. I kind of, I'm juggling like 5 books right now, okay? It's a little out of control, but that's how I like it. Yeah, so that's all I have for today. Like I said, short month, short episode. I hope that you will subscribe if you haven't subscribed, like this video, comment, share it with somebody who's looking for a new knitting podcast to watch. And if you haven't yet, you know, check out Home of the High Life mittens on Ravelry. Check out my Etsy shop. I've got some sweet little project pouches that I made, like notions pouches in there. And until next time, the plant gnats are gonna get me. I will see you next time. Bye.